Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Warcraft news episode. And you know what, seriously, this is actually a pretty good day for the Warcraft news. Blizzard have listened to their players. They've made a genuinely great set of Shadowlands changes that will make it better. They've also clarified a lot of really good things about Torghast, and then also for the mages. Hey, they've done you guys pretty good as well. Then we've got some really interesting lore to dive into, including potentially when the Machine of Death actually broke and what that means. We've got news about their postponed event, and also character creation updates. And much like in World of Warcraft, you can update your character after creation with Skillshare, today's sponsor, where I've got an awesome thing to show you, and where the first 1,000 of you to click the link down below will get 2 months of premium for free. And of course, it's just $10 a month after that. Now, you've got to check out Productivity for Designers. This is where the guys from DKNG work you through a bunch of super important things. I mean, seriously, if you are a freelancer in any field, or you want to freelance, or you want to impress your boss, maybe you're gunning for that promotion, then this is a really great start. It is a must for creatives, and here's the secret, actually, almost every job is creative when you drill down into it, right? Not just, the drawing ones. And these principles will help you. So I think it's absolutely worth your time. I certainly enjoyed it and found it useful. And the first 1,000 of you to click my link will get 2 months Skillshare Premium for free. And after that, it's just $10 a month. So a big thank you to Skillshare for helping our team out, being a great partner. And with that, let's get into the video. First up for the news, we've got some really excellent stuff, right? Blizz have removed the timers from Torghast. They're just gone. The feedback was loud, the feedback was clear, and Blizzard did respond to it. And their changes, actually, in light of all this, are quite good. And I actually think they work towards solving some gameplay issues within Torghast and actually make it better. So this truly is a win-win. In the old system, right, Torments were these debuffs, okay? And the debuffs would stack in magnitude for every minute you were on a floor. So after 20 minutes on a floor, you would take, say, 20% more magic damage, as an example. Now, this had the psychological impact on the player experience of, just feeling like you were, you perceived it, right, like you were on a timer. And it also caused a little bit of gameplay issues, but really only for the most bleeding edge if that was possible. And that stuff's all gone, but Torments actually still do remain. Torments will now apply when you first enter the first floor of a set of floors, okay? So each floor in that set will then increase the magnitude of your Torment. Once you complete that set of floors, or cell block as they're called, then that Torment will actually stick with you for the rest of the run. Now, this means that Torments are no longer a soft enrage timer, right? Getting you to go fast. Instead, they're just a way of scaling up the difficulty of Torghast as you ascend the tower, which, is how it should be anyway. Now, Blizzard also have changed how some of them work. So the old Torments, they nerfed you. They made you feel worse. Instead, the new Torments, they buff your enemies. And that's a really important difference, because buffed enemies can still be played around by you, especially if, you're a slow and methodical player, which is what a lot of people wanted to do with Torghast. Now, the Torments themselves, honestly, they're pretty darn simple. So there's one that increases physical damage of enemies by 3%. Of course, that stacks up per floor. There's one that does the same for magic damage, one that increases enemy max health, one that deals damage to you, and then 2 that summon in, one of them's dogs, the other one's Valkyr. To be honest, they're kind of annoying, but the stacks for those increase the health of the mobs that are summoned in every once in a while. So as an example, right, you could reach the top of a set of floors and you could have a 15% buff to enemy physical damage done on you. The next set of floors could start buffing the health of your enemies. And while that new Torment will be stacking up as you move, through the floors of the next sort of zone of Torghast, the older Torment that you have will just remain there on your character. So after 3 sets of floors, you could have enemies with 15% more physical damage, 15% more magical damage, and 25% more health. Now, this is actually a pretty good change, because right now, Torghast has a big snowballing problem where you vastly overpower enemies to the point where it's like you're not even playing around your anima powers because you're so powerful. And that's even in a case where your first few floors are a bit ropey. That's just how good the anima powers are. Well, with these Torments scaling up the difficulty a bit more as you're ascending the tower, that should be better, and the change makes complete sense. Sure, enemies got a bit more powerful anyway, but it just was not scaling up nearly enough. So overall here, this should allow Blizzard to keep the gameplay, be engaging for longer, and to increase the difficulty of the bleeding edge gameplay, all while allowing people to go at their own pace with no feeling like you're on the clock. And it also does mean that, you can just sit there and wait for Bloodlust if you want to. I think you would be mad to do so. but hey, I guess you could. And I think really it's just something that doesn't matter, right? If Method wants to use their time terribly, fine, let him do that. Don't design your game around what 0.01% of players will do. Plus, there's also another angle here that ties into that. Blizz have finally clarified how the rewards actually work, and this is mega important for all of you because that's tied to your legendary gear acquisition, and that will be so important in Shadowlands. So, Torghast is going to have two modes. One of them is twisting corridors, and the other one is just doing a cell block run. Now, twisting corridors isn't infinite, but it is longer, and it strings multiple sets of floors, sort of also called cell blocks, together, right, for one really big run. Now, that mode will drop cosmetic item currency, and that means that, big progression there is more about vanity items, bragging rights, and, playing Torghast for the sense of fun, which is what I'd like to do. Then the cell block runs are just sets of 6 floors in a themed cell block. You'll be able to select your difficulty, and at the end of your run, you'll get your legendary materials. Now, the dev's intent there is to open up 2 blocks per week, right? Now, do you just do 2 runs a week on a character to cap your legendary resources? Maybe is it 2 heroic runs? And maybe 4 normal runs to cap your resources? Right now, the balance of that is just something we do not know. But the core point here is that the legendary resources come from doing the shortened cell block runs. So it seems to me, if I read into this, like Blizzard's intent is that players can be able to just go and get what they need for power progression pretty quickly, right, by doing those cell block runs in the week, but then that the twisting corridors exists for those longer sort of, like Torghast runs for super fans or roguelike game fans like myself. Now, we will need to wait and see how all of this is balanced, but I'll tell you this, so far I like the direction that this is going in, and certainly it is heartening that Blizzard so clearly listened to player feedback on this one. And I think this is an admission, in a way, that the problem of waiting for Lust was maybe larger in Blizzard's head than it was in the heads of players, and that the costs of fixing that problem via a soft and rage solution, that those costs were larger than the benefits gained. So I think this is great, and the Blue Post did mention that these changes were in response to player feedback on time pressure and an increasing difficulty via nerfing the power of their character. So yeah, there you have it. Blizz listened, they thought it over, they changed their mind, and here we are, at a better solution for everyone. This is exactly the type of discourse, I suppose, the BFA was missing, and it seems like here, in Shadowlands, we actually have that. And that really is a great thing. Of course, there's much more to do, but this is a great sign. Then next up, we've got another great example of Blizzard actually listening to things. So, Fire Mage Ignites, right? They were going to be spread with Fire Blast, and as we said in our video, it felt a bit awkward. Well, Blizzard heard the Mage feedback, and they decided to make Phoenix Flames actually spread Ignite and be a baseline ability. Yep, they baselined a talent, so you have a new button now. They added functionality to it to give it stronger gameplay, and they just increased the amount of interactivity within the spec. Isn't that just wonderful? I mean, okay, if you've seen our class videos, well, you'll know that a fair few specs do have their issues, and I guess now that I've seen this change for the mages, I'm just kind of thinking, there must be so many small changes like this one that will be really easy wins for Blizzard, right? So, you know what? Let's try to help here. Post a comment down below that begins with like a hashtag easy class wins and leave your suggestions. Someone on our team will comb through those messages, everything with that tag, we'll compile them into a document. But yeah, there you go. This is a great change for the mages. It shows Blizzard are doing a bit of listening there. Obviously, if you've seen our class videos, a lot more work needs to be done, but it is good to see this. The next up, well, just some more serious news. So, Blizzard's Shadowlands reveal event, which is previously scheduled for the 9th of June, has been postponed, with Blizzard saying that in light of the events that are taking place in the USA, that more important voices need to be heard over theirs, and that's why they're not choosing to make that big announcement then. Now, this does come along with Activision making a similar statement and ramping up their in-game toxicity monitoring for their Call of Duty games. Now, in a world where, just about every reveal event has been kicked back by around 2 weeks, I do think that, Blizzard not doing this would be a very notable thing. It would stand out. Now, some people have criticized inconsistencies between this and the Blitzchung situation. Now, I would say in reality there that is, this is stuff that's going on in Blizzard's home turf. And that's where Blizzard Blizzard have got more direct control over what we say, which means we're probably going to get more clarity into what they think. And that means they've got the freedom to be totally authentic on the issue. Now, the comparison definitely does look bad in the impacts of, say, Chinese policy and Blizzard's ability to express themselves in that situation, but here I do think that this is Blizzard actually sticking with their own values and that of their staff. And that does mean that I think this is the right thing for Blizzard to do, just in general, and I suppose by their employees. Certainly with so much going on, I think a Shadowlands announcement can wait. And even if you were to look at this from a purely pragmatic only position, I mean, come on, this is clearly not the time to make a major announcement because obviously the public attention is elsewhere. So there you go, that is what is going on. For me, you know, I'm watching, I'm listening, trying to learn, see what's going on. Of course, I'm not in America, so I'm just not plugged into what's going on as much over there from, you know, where I am in Northern Ireland. But yeah, that's basically what's up there. Shadowlands stuff, expect it soon enough. We've been covering a fair amount of this stuff on our industry news channel. Generally, it seems like 1 to 2 weeks is the delay that most companies are doing, so probably expect that mid to late June. And then next up, some lore, and actually some Ireland as well, which is kind of nice to see. So, we know that Toronto, well, we knew that Toronto would play a big role in Ardenweald, and those who paid attention to data mine models knew that a certain spoiler character would be present. Yes. Spoiler, right? You know, I'm not going to be talking about how this full story plays out, more just the interesting things that we now know from a slice of it that's available on the PTR, on Alpha. So, that's your warning. Let's go. Ysera, right? Now, we knew she would return based on her having a Shadowlands model, and, well, it turns out that we find, right, when we go to Ardenweald, a particularly interesting wild seed. Now, wild seeds are essentially souls that enter Ardenweald, and they're kind of nurtured from seed to maturity, and that's kind of the, like, Ardenweald process works. Now, we find this seed that's particularly interesting, that seems to know us and seems to be tormented by nightmares, and it soon becomes apparent that the seed is none other than Ysera, right? And that then we even see visions of Ysera with those who are closest to her, and those people even have messages for her. It's actually quite nicely done, and it ends with us reliving her final nightmare, her death. Now, right after that happens, the game breaks. So that's it for the storyline, but we've actually learned quite a lot here. So here's thing number one. We are told that Ysera was one of the last souls that made its way to Ardenweald before the Arbiter went dormant. So that's going on. And then, actually, the most recent data mine build of the game has a dormant, Arbiter model with, a different heart. So that's a fun little tidbit. But anyway, going back to the point, the Arbiter going dormant is seemingly what broke the machinery of death. Now, if Ysera died before that machinery of death broke, then we actually know what happened to a bunch of characters. It means that Varian and Vol'jin died when the machinery of death was still functioning. Now, Vol'jin was almost snatched up into the maw, sort of reading into some of his data mine lines, but, we're told he was touched by the hand of Valerie, didn't end up going there, and that suggests that the Arbiter helped him out. So there's that. Now, as for Varian, well, we know he's not going to the maw, right? So we've just got to assume that he is in a realm of the Shadowlands, just one, that we don't know yet. Now, this all means that characters who died in the campaigns of Suramar, of the Broken Shore, Argus, and BFA, of course, they all did go straight to the maw, bypassing the jailer. Anybody who died shortly after Ysera went, they went to the maw. This at least gives us some indication of who we could meet in the maw, and maybe some of the characters that we won't see in the initial 4 realms of the Shadowlands of 9.0, but who we maybe will see in a future patch. I mean, come on, having a future patch that maybe brings Anduin, as an example, into the Shadowlands and maybe has Varian be there, that could be, maybe a pretty free win for Blizzard, narratively speaking. Now, pulling this back to Ysera herself, well, that's also all rather interesting. What was that constellation in the cinematic? Was that a representation of what happens when a creature as powerful as her, one imbued, of course, with Titan power, dies? Is that what that is? Does this maybe reflect her relationship with Elune? Or is it indeed just a pretty cinematic? It is actually quite hard to tell. There's then also the strangeness of the end of the Emerald Nightmare raid. And this is something it's been racking my brain for so long. A ghostly form of Ysera is seen walking towards the Seed of the Void that we inadvertently planted in the heart of the Emerald Dream. Well, was that actually Ysera, that ghostly figure? Is the Ysera of the Shadowlands maybe harboring something suspect because of the interaction of that Void Seed? It's basically impossible to know, but it certainly does raise some questions. And then for Ardenweald itself, well, it sure is strange seeing anglicized, Americanized, wow-ificated versions of Irish names. That's a bit weird, but anyway, it is kind of cool seeing Blizzard's take on things like Sproggins, and just there is a whole bunch of Irish mythology there, and just, you know, names that will be familiar to us in the island that are now in World of Warcraft, albeit in a rather differently spelt form. So, you know, that adds like the Banshees and stuff, which are also from Irish mythology that are in World of Warcraft. Pretty cool to see. And then generally speaking for Ardenweald, oh, it's a treat. Running around Ardenweald is such a treat. It is so nice. Like, we've seen forests in the game before, but like the color palette of this one, the creatures that are there, it is so cool. And then you look up to the sky, right, and you see all these crazy big trees, these like constellations that are actually the tops of trees. It is such a cool zone. Blizzard's artists are incredible, and suffice to say, I'm probably going to go Night Fae, even if it doesn't make complete sense to do so, because, hey, it's an RPG, and I think it's cool. And then finally for today's video, a quick hit of character creation. So druids can now select tints in the character creation process, even the artifact tints if they've actually unlocked them on their account. And there is also new character preview armor, right? The old stuff was iconic, but it certainly was dated, and this new stuff, I think, just does a far better job of teasing the sort of power, right, that new players will be able to get once they get their characters up to speed. So that was another nice little addition that Blizzard made as well. So there you have it. There is the Warcraft news. I think that stuff with Torghast is really good. Also, learning how Torghast will sort of fit into the rest of the game is really good as well. And I do like how it seems that if you're somebody who, you know, you'd only be going into Torghast begrudgingly, it's like you got to do a few cell block runs, the shorter ones, rather than really go deep in there. I think that's really good, and what I really love about that is that by having the legendary materials be totally divorced from the sort of bigger mode of Torghast, it actually means the bigger mode of Torghast is free to just be whatever it can be, right? Because it's no longer tied to power progression in the game. And that's the thing with World of Warcraft. As soon as power progression is tied to something, then it's all about, you know, balance and player progression and all of that stuff. But if something is just not connected to power progression whatsoever, there's just total design freedom to make it be, like, just be whatever it is, you know. And there's some of the cool content in the game, like Chromie, you know, the Chromie scenario was kind of like that. It was just a unique, creative thing. I love how this now means that the body of Torghast just doesn't have those restrictions. And that makes me really happy, because I think Torghast is just really cool, full of potential, and even just thinking about what it could be like at launch and then thinking about how Blizzard could update it with patches, the whole thing honestly is just exciting to me. Of course, I'm going to temper that excitement with realism when we're going through the alpha and beta process, but I mean, hey, I've got to be excited about something, right? Come on. So yeah, I'm genuinely really like how that's all panning out. Of course, there are some other things. I mean, you know, there's class-based anima powers. Maybe some spec-specific anima powers would be really good. Maybe that could steer a few more builds, you know, so there is stuff to be looked at, but right now, I think stuff's going in a good direction and the communication is really nice. So there you go. That is it for today's video. Of course, if you want to learn some new skills, check out some fun content. The one that I called out at the top of this video, I think is a really good one. Just really interesting, and this type of thing, if you actually go through that, think about those things as principles, and then apply them, could actually be quite useful. So there's that. And of course, a big thank you to them for supporting our channel. They truly have been a great partner. So yeah, they're a good bunch. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you for watching today's video, and I will see you next time.